This podcast is a quest for well-being, a quest for a meaningful life through the exploration of fundamental truth. Enlightening ideas, insights on physical, mental, and spiritual health. The inspiration is love. The aspiration is to awaken new ways of thinking that can lead us to a new way of being well. Welcome to Body, Mind, and Soul Healing Conversations.
There are many definitive truths involved in cancer research, care, and treatment. After testing, we might know that specific drugs work or don't work in certain instances. We may even know what the predicted outcome might be when comparing one surgical approach to another. But doctors do not have the luxury of working in absolutes. Absolutes may offer more peace than unknowns, but there are not many absolutes in cancer. Instead, there is a stream of endless unknowns, creating a chaotic and unpredictable environment for the feelings of anyone faced with a challenge like cancer. David Richman's experience has shown that cancer usually crashes into one's life with a sort of primitive, metal-to-flesh force, and people don't often jump right into unpacking the vast array of emotions the experience evokes for them. Sometimes they never do. Since David first recognized the common thread binding people touched by cancer, the tendency not to examine, discuss, or even acknowledge the emotional side of their experience, his goal has been to shine a light on the things we've all kept buried, in the hopes that people might better understand what they and their loved ones went through. Valeria Teles interviews David Richman, the author of Cycle of Lives, 15 People's Stories, 5,000 Miles, and a Journey Through the Emotional Chaos of Cancer. David is an author, public speaker, philanthropist, and endurance athlete whose mission is to form more meaningful human connections through storytelling. In his first book, Winning in the Middle of the Pack, he discussed how to get more out of ourselves than ever imagined. With Cycle of Lives, David shares the interconnected stories of people overcoming trauma and delves deeply into their emotional journeys with cancer. He continues to do Ironman triathlons and a wide range of endurance athletic events, having recently completed a solo 4,700-mile bike ride. He is married, lives in Southern Nevada, and has twins who are in college. Meet David at david-richman.com. Here's the interview with David Richman.
In your own words, who is David Richman?
I am an author. I'm an endurance athlete. I'm a father, a husband, a cook, and a very optimistic person.
Talk to me for a moment about what is to be optimistic. What does it look like?
I never really was able to, Valerie, put my thought around exactly what the definition was until a few years ago, and then it hit me. And I think that an optimist is somebody who believes that their best moments and their best days are ahead of them rather than behind them. And so I live each day thinking optimistically that the best thing is yet to happen to me and that good things are still coming. So I guess when I stop believing that, I won't be an optimist anymore.
How did you come to this understanding, David?
I think it was by trying to push myself to accomplish more, not for other people, but for myself to find out what I was made of. So I didn't grow up like an athlete or anything. And I grew up just kind of working hard, trying to put food to mouth. But when I was able to get into things that allowed me to prove that I could accomplish my own goals, then I said, let me see what else. And then that's what I keep looking forward to.
I love this idea of experiencing life from that space of adventure as a traveler, because that's what it seems, this seems to be. We are here just temporarily as travelers, just passing by. But we don't often reflect on this. We just kind of live day to day, kind of distracted by so many things, so many ideas that are not even real. We kind of forget to push aside this reflection on life and death. What would you do if you were diagnosed with cancer and you knew you had just a few weeks or a month to die? I do ask this question to pretty much all my guests at the end. What would you do? In your case, I'll ask you now. What would you do if you knew you would have, let's say, not a time, but you didn't have much to live or too many days ahead? What would you do? Would you change anything or do anything differently?
Yeah, it's such a great question. And, until you're faced with that reality, you don't really know what you would do, but you think what you know what you would do. For me, excuse me, I think I know what I would do is I'd force myself to let go of the unimportant things. I'm very fortunate that I have great relationship with my wife and with my kids and in life and with friends. And I do a lot of things that I like. But I still have things that I do that are not important, that I waste time on, or that I choose to waste time, or that I get frustrated on, or that I feel like I have to do. And those things aren't important. So I would probably immediately let go of the things that aren't important and just spend as much time telling the people I love how much I love them and why. And maybe doing some meditation and contemplation about what I've done to the world and what the world's given to me.
What is the meaning of death to you, David, these days?
I've heard a lot of people say words like moved on, transitioned, that type of thing. And I haven't spent a tremendous amount of time contemplating what death would mean, but I think through my work and through the wonderful conversations I've had with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people about death and about the thought of death, I think that previously, Valerie, I thought death was an ending. And now I don't think that it is. I don't know if I know how it's not an ending or what it might be the beginning or continuation of, but I feel like what I believe now is that I think I know what it's not, and I think it's not an ending.
I want to ask you another question. Do you have any spiritual practices, David?
I really don't. I'm not against it. My wife is very spiritual. My son is a philosophy major, just finished his master's degree in philosophy and has a leaning towards religious philosophy. And so I'm surrounded by it a bit, but I think I'm more like Mother Earth spirituality, like
Yeah.
I worship the sun and the ground and the air and having a healthy mind and being good to people. I'm a little. It's not quite organized thoughts about spirituality, but more like a presence of being.
What do you think is the purpose of the human experience?
I think the purpose of the human experience is that we've been given this opportunity, or whatever you want to call it, of consciousness. And I think that it is to, when we can, and we can't always have control, but when we can have control or take control, is to do the best that we can for ourselves and for others and for the things and the people around us. So that's kind of my thought, is that I'm always trying to do better for the people and the things and the opportunities that come along that I've been given. And that to me is pretty much everything.
Do you practice self-love? Do you believe in the practice of unconditional self-love? Or have you heard about it?
I have heard about it, and I do. I think in my case, maybe with a lot of people, it is a process rather than a point where you say, okay, I'm going to stop doing one thing or start doing another thing. I think it's a process, and it becomes a matter of forgiveness, acceptance. I mean, there's a lot of steps to it, but I definitely do. And I'm definitely, as I go through life and as I experience more and as I stay grounded and heart centered and connected to the things and people around me, then I find that that self love increases for sure.
And what is your idea or understanding of balance?
That's so funny because that's like the number one topic that is in my brain at all times, balance. Um, the yin and yang balance, whatever you want to call it, positive, negative energy. You have to have both. You can't enjoy the good unless you recognize the bad. You can't get through the bad unless you recognize the good. I mean, so to me, balance is everything in life. It almost is what drives me every minute is something related to balance.
I like the word harmony better. I know we use balance a lot, but harmony, it resonates with me more because of the idea of nature. It's connected to nature. So it's everything coming together unconditionally without any judgment, just doing what it does, life being life. 2020 has been a very interesting time. Talk to me for a moment about your thoughts. How did your life change from the events in 2020?
It's not that much of an original thought, maybe, but I really believe that that the earth, the world, people, we don't have very many opportunities to take a collective breath, take a moment to just stop. And when we take a breath or when we take a moment and we're forced to, in this case, I don't know since World War II that we've had, the opportunity to take a collective breath. I think that we come through stronger, that we can transform. And so I've used 2020 as an opportunity to take a deep breath and realize that sometimes you got to be cocooned, and maybe you can come out, more like a butterfly when you went in like a caterpillar. So I think that as horrible as experiences many people have had, that at least the positive side, the optimistic side of me says we could use 2020 as a way to take a deep breath, take a break, and maybe transform and come out better the other side.
Grief. How do you describe the experience of grief?
Oh man, you always ask such good questions. I listen to your shows and I go, man, she asks good questions. Grief, I think it's different for everybody. Some people, grief rolls off their back like a water off a duck's back. Some people get mired in their grief like it's mud, and they can never move on from it. I think for me, grief is a process of understanding that people come and go, that good times come and go, bad times come and go. Right? Grief is just one facet. It's not everything. It's not the end. It's not a place we're supposed to stay in. It's just a process, and for everybody, it's different. For me, grief is one thing, and for you, it's a different thing. And so, I think to understand that grief is a process and not a place is the most important thing.
Not a destination, right? What do you love most about being in a human body, and what has been the greatest challenge for you?
What I love is the ability to continue to see what you're capable of doing. I think that is, that's fantastic, right? That, at my age, I'm in my late 50s, I'm still doing things like riding my bike across the country and doing Ironmans and, being healthy. And so for me, that's what I love about it. The second part you said is what's difficult about it?
Yeah, challenging. What has been the greatest challenge in being in a human body for you?
I'm not really sure if there has been any challenges. I think maybe I could say that I came to that realization later. that I should try to push myself to find out what I'm capable of. So I think the biggest challenge is forgiving myself for not doing
Yeah.
this earlier, right?
Yeah.
That's the biggest challenge. Other than that, I don't find any challenges in the human body. I think it's all opportunity.
That's being an optimistic. That for sure. That's
Yeah.
beautiful. My last warm-up question is, what is freedom to you? What is to be free from your perspective? What would that be?
Actually, freedom is almost impossible to have absolute freedom on my definition, but freedom is that you have the ability to make a choice on what you're going to do. Because I've always believed that the choice to do something is the choice to not do 1,000 other things. And so when we get to choose the one thing that we're going to do at this moment, we're choosing that one thing as the most important thing. And I think freedom is the ability to have that choice. And we don't always have it, but the more times that we could have that choice, then we're free to choose what we want to do at that moment, because we're never going to get that moment back.
So you wrote the book, Cycle of Lives, 15 people's stories, 5,000 miles, and a journey through the emotional chaos of cancer. What was the inspiration and the intention of writing this book?
Well, the inspiration was from my sister when she passed away from brain cancer. I wanted to keep her memory alive and stay close to her in the way that I could. I would do like a endurance event every year in her honor, and raise money for the cancer center that took care of her and whatever. That was the inspiration. What I was trying to accomplish is I found when I was doing this, Valeria, that people were good about talking about the tasks of cancer. Where I get my next PET scan? What hospital should I go to? What doctor should I see? How do I navigate work? Those kind of things. But what we're not equipped to do was to have the hard discussions about the emotional side of cancer. And, a perfect example is people don't want to burden you. They don't want to make you feel guilty. They don't want to feel bad. They don't want your sympathy. There's a lot of reasons they don't talk about it. And sometimes when somebody tells us something bad, we go, "Oh, I'm sorry," and then walk away because we don't want to make them feel bad. We don't want to make them feel guilty. We don't know what to say. We don't want to sound like an idiot. And so the emotional side of it is something that every single person I spoke to said that was the number one major issue about the cancer experience, no matter what perspective, right? Caregiver, loved one, survivor, even doctors. The number one most thing every single one of them said was, I had difficulty navigating the emotional side of it. And so that's what the purpose is to bring these stories to people so that they can learn perhaps how to better understand what people have gone through or are going through. And that would allow us to start these hard conversations to get closer to and better understand the people that are around us and that we care about.
Before I ask you more questions about your book and emotions, I'll be asking you questions about your own emotions, the ones that you describe in the book. You are a trainer, consultant, and transformational expert. Talk to me about your services. How do we find you in workshops and online?
Sure.
Offline?
So I do a number of different things, and fortunately, I get to have the opportunity to work with a lot of different kinds of people and organizations. But I do some talks publicly and privately to small and large organizations, talking about transformation, how to get the most out of ourselves for ourselves rather than to make other people happy. I talk about the emotional transformation that we can have on connecting to other people. I do some one-on-one coaching. So basically, the best, what I do and how I can help people and serve people is you can find that from my website. It's cycleoflives.org. It's a nonprofit, so I'm fortunate enough to be able to do most of this with no profit intended, which is fortunate.
Yeah. I know that you created the book. Everything that you do actually now connected to cancer has to do with raising awareness and also funds for cancer research and care. Thank you for that too, David. When it comes to emotional intelligence, emotional resilience, what's the difference between one person and the other? Have you found the aspects, what differs one person from another when it comes to strength emotionally?
I don't know if I know the difference of what makes them one way or another, but I do know that not everybody, but almost everybody has the same thing in common. And that is that they want others to understand and to participate in the emotional side of it, but they don't know how. And we don't know how to communicate with them. That's the one common theme. And so, when I wrote the book, I had people that had all kinds of emotional reaction to cancer. If you can imagine, Valeria, I even had somebody who smiled when they were given a diagnosis that they were being wheeled into emergency brain surgery to remove a tumor. She smiled and said, thank God it's a tumor and not me. She thought she was going crazy. And so, so I think that the important thing to recognize about the trauma of cancer, especially of cancer, is that people just don't know how to start to begin to talk about the emotional side of it. And that's the common thing. So we have to figure out a way to be brave enough to navigate that with people, which puts us out on a limb and ask them to be put out on a limb about something that's very, very difficult to experience.
From your experience, David, how did you deal with that, with your emotions? How did you communicate them?
I didn't. So I was kind of like everybody else, right? I just, whatever, I'm fine. Or somebody would ask me a question and I'd give them an answer that would make them not ask me a second question because I didn't want to deal with the emotional side of it. So because I thought maybe people didn't care, or I thought maybe it wasn't important enough, or I was embarrassed that I felt this, whatever the reason at the time was, it was the same thing. And until I felt comfortable that if people are going to ask, even if they ask the wrong question, they're showing that they care. And I think that's all we really want, is a safe place to know that people care. And then we can start to figure out how to answer the questions. And so I learned how to talk about the emotional side of it and how I was affected by losing my sister and all the other things that came with it, only because then I felt safe that I could talk to people who were actually interested in finding out more.
Do you think that trust plays a huge role when it comes to expressing emotions? Trust in the
I do. I mean, I think it's the number one thing because trust and safety, right? Safety. We think we're all just in some way or another, we're all just little kids, and maybe we're grown up little kids, but we're still just little kids. And I think little kids, the only thing they want to do is to be safe, and the only way they're safe is if they trust that everything's going to be okay, even at difficult times. If it's going to be okay, if you have that trust and safety. So I think that's the cornerstone of it. And if somebody asks you a question out of genuine love and trust and interest and curiosity and wants to make you feel trust and safety, then I think that's the great place to start giving the answers.
In your book, you mentioned that the strongest positive emotion during the cancer experience you had was gratitude. Why gratitude?
I have met so many, even if I only meet them on a short conversation like you and I have had, but I've met literally thousands of people along this journey. And when I was on my bike ride, I would meet multiple people every day who would tell me the same thing, like, oh my gosh, I lost this person, or this person just got diagnosed, or cancer runs in my family, or blah, blah, blah. And then they always went to the next thing was, oh, is your book's going to help people with the emotional side? Oh my God, that's the one thing I struggle with. And da, da, da. So I'm very grateful to have found that is a very common thread with everybody who's been affected by cancer, no matter the perspective, right? Even doctors. And so I'm grateful to have known that so that I could maybe make some kind of an impact on changing that a little bit.
The negative emotion, the strongest negative emotion you mentioned in the book was sorrow. Talk to me for a moment about that.
Yeah. So when you do have to face the fact that you're going to lose somebody, or that you did lose somebody, or that your good friend lost their spouse. Recently, a friend of mine let me know that his wife died very suddenly from cancer, and two young kids getting ready to go off to college, and the whole thing. And they were married for almost 30 years, and just the happiest people ever. And it's sorrowful. I mean, it's just such a painful thing to watch people go through, and to know that a piece of them has been ripped away. So for me, the sorrow was losing my sister, and then also really losing the only person that knew me as a kid, right? So so it is a hard thing. And so for me, it was sorrow, because you cannot hide from the fact that it's so difficult to lose people.
Is that possible to prepare to go through this kind of experience of losing someone? What do you think, David?
I will tell you that if there is a positive in receiving, and I don't know this from myself, I only know this from talking to people, but if there's a positive in receiving a diagnosis of terminal cancer, if there is a positive in that, the one positive is that it can give you the opportunity to spend more quality time with a loved one, and to tell them why and how much you love them and what effect they've had on you, and prepare them. There are a couple of stories in my book about people who went through that process. And one in particular, I'll be very short about it, Valeria, but one in particular, it was a gentleman who was very tough to love and didn't love anybody. And he finally broke through, and she broke through to him, and he met somebody who was the love of his life. And shortly after they met, she developed cancer. They got married quickly. She died very soon, and very tragic. And when near the end of her life, when they had to navigate the fact that she was going to die together, she said to him, "I'm only angry about dying because now you're at your best, and some other woman is going to get to enjoy that for the rest of your life, and it's not going to be me. And I did all this work to make you so good."
Yes.
And he eventually and very quickly did find somebody else who was now the love of his life again, and he wouldn't have it any other way. Although he would have rather have Brandy had lived, and that he'd be married to her and happy and whatever. But that didn't happen. And so the positive, the only positive you can take from that, is that they were able to reconcile all these things. They were able to prepare each other for the loss. And if cancer does anything on a terminal case, it does give you the opportunity to maybe get through that together, as opposed to, say, somebody dying in a car accident or something like that,
I have heard that quote, this is from somebody it's unknown, said, "Grief is the price of love." Do you relate to that somehow?
I do, and hopefully we all will be fortunate enough to have as little grief for all the love we get as possible. But it has to be. That's the balance. That's the harmony, right? You can't walk on a tightrope unless you're willing to fall. Do you know what I'm saying? And so sometimes you're going to fall, but that's the price of walking the tightrope. And you can guarantee no grief if you don't love anybody, but what's the good in that?
There's a passage in your book where you say absolutes may offer more peace than unknowns, but there are not many absolutes in cancer. Instead, there is a stream of endless unknowns, creating a chaotic and unpredictable environment for the feelings of anyone faced with a challenge like cancer. I love this passage because, especially in the beginning, when you say absolutes may offer more peace than unknowns, But there are not many absolutes in life, really, right? Not just cancer, but in life.
That's the truth, right? I mean, do you know what's going to happen in 20 minutes? Absolutely. Are you for sure what's going to happen tomorrow?
Of
Right?
course not. Not even the
Right.
next
And
second.
so I know if I
No,
set a
no.
timer, as long as the battery works, it's absolutely going to go off, right? Okay, there's a few things I know, but there's not much more that I know other than setting a timer or eventually at a red light it's going to turn green. Okay, maybe, but I mean, big things, there isn't any absolutes. And so um, what you said very early on is everything is a journey. I think that you have to, if you can accept the fact that each moment, each day is going to be an unknown. Then if you are fortunate enough to be heart centered, grounded, maybe fortunate enough to be surrounded by a loved one or many loved ones, then you can navigate it together.
Yes. I love that, David. Yeah. What a beautiful message, important message. Yeah, to me, this is the unknown. Talking to you now, life itself, being a human body is the unknown. This is the unknown already. And everything we claim to know is just that desire, the dreamland that, of desires, of wishes, it seems like we have choices, but I think we just become aware of them, the options we have. But I don't know how much of this we can really
Right.
control.
It's so funny because I say, like, I know a lot of stuff, right? I know a lot of stuff, right? But every day I always go, oh my God, I don't know
Yeah.
anything. I don't know a thing, right? Because I don't know a
Yes.
thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So we almost at the end. I didn't ask a question. I have some questions here I didn't ask. I'd like to ask now. How did you choose these 15 people? And what is your favorite story?
Well, choosing the 15 people was easy because I wanted a range of age, a range of type of cancer. I wanted a range of the severity of cancer, and I wanted to have different emotions. Lastly, I wanted it to not just be people that had cancer. I wanted it to be doctors, executives at a medical company, survivors, loved ones, and people that had cancer too, right? So picking the people was, I wanted a very interesting story. So I'll be super quick about this, Valeria. So I figured point A is when they encounter cancer, no matter when, as a kid or as an adult, as a professional. Point A is when they encounter cancer. Point B is today. How did they navigate the emotional journey from A to B in relation to everything that happened before A? So I wanted people that had very interesting stories and had trauma and emotion that we could all relate to. And then when it came to they got cancer, point A, how did those traumas affect their emotional intelligence, their ability to navigate the emotional side of the journey of cancer? And so that's how I picked the 15 people. My favorite story. Oh my God, they're all so good. I think I don't know. I don't have a favorite. They're also they all touch me. There's a couple that every time I read it, even if I've read it 1,000 times, they still make me cry. So I guess those would be amongst my favorite. And I think there's something about Joshua's story that makes it my favorite. And this is a guy who just would not let anybody in, would not let anybody take care of him. And through his cancer, he's very young when he got cancer, just early 20s. No chance to survive, but he survived. His girlfriend abandoned him in the waiting room for surgery. Said, "I can't handle this. This is not my life. You're on your own." And he managed to get through it. And he now helps people. He works for the cancer center that took care of him in Florida, and it does outreach to the Latino community to talk about don't be so macho, get some help, and check stuff out. But his story has a special twist that is so heart wrenching that it makes me understand when people sometimes don't want to accept your help or they don't want to ask for help. Maybe there's more. And for him, I was able to uncover the more was that he very tragically, when he was 6 years old, happened to witness his mother killing herself. And I couldn't imagine in a million years what that must be like. But tiny little thing I could imagine is why that gives him the thought that he doesn't want to ask for help. He doesn't want to give himself to let anybody in. And he finally has figured out how to do those things against that horrible trauma and against being abandoned, being wheeled into surgery, and against being told you're going to die and still live. So I think the story is one of strength and hope and optimism and resiliency. And it just, it makes me shudder to think how much this guy has overcome. And he's such a happy, wonderful, optimistic, neat guy that it just, to me, shows that I don't have it bad. I never did, not compared to anybody else,
That makes me think about this situation of not asking for help when we need help. And it seems like it happens more to men than women. We are more community oriented and we talk a lot. But men, I see with my own husband, people don't do really well with that, asking for help, being vulnerable. We can find that strength that inspires others to do the same. I'll ask my husband to read that.
Let me tell you a super quick story. So my wife gives me a hard time all the time. She's like, every time that we have a bunch of people over, you got to run the kitchen. You have to do everything, and you never let anybody help. And I go, but I'm in control. I got 20 people here. I'm barbecuing everything. I'm pouring drinks. Like, I got it. She goes, yeah, but you don't understand. You are taking away other people's joy. They want to help you. It's not like you need the help. Give them what they want. They want to help you. And I'm like, oh, I never thought of it that way. Maybe I am ruining their experience by trying to be in control. Maybe I should let them help because that's what they really want to do. So I started to learn that asking for help and letting people help you is actually something positive you can do for them. It's not just a negative for you, right? I had to learn that.
Oh, I love that lesson. It's a gift,
Yes.
Right? To let others
Well, who
in,
knew?
of course,
Who knew?
and help us. Who knew? Yeah. Oh, boy, I wish my husband was here. Okay, he will listen to this too. He needs to hear that. So, David, I have a few more questions for you, the ending questions. Would you like to add anything or read a passage in your book?
Oh, my gosh. I'm in the back of the house. I don't even have the book in front of me. You read a beautiful passage, so I'm not going to. But I would just add that I think that the book is inspiring. It's very easy to read. It's a long book, but it's very easy to read because it's a bunch of individual stories. And then the other thing that you can imagine as a reader is that each one of the 15 people or their survivor picked a cancer-focused charity for their profits to go to. So each story has inspired a bunch of people to help raise money and attention to these great organizations that are helping people deal with cancer. So that's the one thing they could remember.
Thank you so much again for everything. Your wisdom, the inspiration that you have become to so many, the way you express that wisdom, it's beautiful too. I absolutely love your wisdom. It's very natural. Thank you, David. So 2 more questions for you. How do you define success these days?
Well, I think success is waking up happy, going to bed happy, and being happy as many times in between as possible. And you know what? It's not always. The happiness doesn't always, or contentment doesn't always come from positive, right? You could be happy because you solved a very difficult problem or something, but I'd say that is it. Waking up saying, hey, I get to put my feet on the ground today, and going to bed saying, I can't wait to wake up tomorrow. And then in between being as content or happy or feeling good about what you did that day as possible.
And my last question is, what are 3 things about life you know for sure as of this moment?
I know for sure it is one, that no matter how dark it is, right? I have a friend who says even the darkest cave can be illuminated by one candle, right? So and even the dirtiest pond can grow a lily, right? So I say that no matter how bad things are, one thing is I know for sure is that tomorrow's another day, right? Or 5 minutes from now is another minute. So if you keep moving forward, you could get a better place. So just keep moving forward. So that's one thing I know. Second thing I know for sure is that we don't get the moments back, right? So when you can, do the best you can do for yourself and for others, because you don't get a chance to do that same minute ever again. And the third thing I would tell you that I know for sure, this took a long time to learn, and probably through the process of this book I learned, is that people do care. You might not always believe it. You might not always have them around you. You might not always know how to let them in, but if you give a chance, even just one person out there does care about you. And so it's on you, it's on me, it's on us to allow people to care. And so they want to and they do. And so I think those are the three biggest things I know about life.
I love that message of letting others in, right? Thank you again, David. And before we say goodbye, where can we find more information about you, your books, services, projects?
Sure, thank you. Just look up David Richman. It's Rachman, davidrichman.com or cycleoflives.org. because it's a nonprofit. And then you could just look up the book Cycle of Lives, and that'll take you wherever you need.
Beautiful. Thank you again, and we'll talk soon. Bye for now, David.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. To learn more about David Richman and his work, please visit david-richman.com.
To learn more about this podcast, please visit fitforjoy.org/podcast. Thank you again for listening, and bye for now.